We now arrive at the final pages of the SPDS. In the previous sections, we moved from ownership and title issues to structural systems to utilities and septic, and then to environmental and infrastructure exposure. Pages 8 and 9 complete the disclosure framework and transition from what exists to legal responsibility. This is where environmental hazards, flood exposure, contamination concerns, and final certifications tie everything together. This section is not just informational. It defines liability boundaries before and after closing, military airport and military facility proximity, noise and use impact. The form asks whether the property is located in the vicinity of a military airport or ancillary military facility. In Arizona, this is highly relevant due to installations such as Luke Air Force Base and other training corridors. Military flight operations can create significant noise and land use limitations. West Valley. Example: a buyer relocating from out of state is unfamiliar with military flight patterns. If the seller is aware of proximity and associated impacts, disclosure ensures expectations are properly set. This is not a marketing issue. It is a livability and value issue. Environmental hazards: asbestos, radon. Lead pesticides: underground. Storage tanks: chemical storage. The SPDS specifically asks whether the seller is aware of the presence of asbestos, radon gas, lead-based paint, pesticides, underground storage tanks, or fuel chemical storage. These categories are high liability risk factors because they can involve health exposure, remediation cost, and regulatory compliance. Phoenix Historic Home. Example: a pre-1978 property may contain lead-based paint. Federal law requires separate lead-based paint disclosure. The SPDS reinforces that environmental hazards must be disclosed if known. Underground storage tank. Example: a rural property once used for agricultural diesel storage may have a buried tank. If known and not disclosed, remediation costs can be substantial and may involve state or federal environmental oversight. Contract writing integration. Environmental disclosures may trigger specialized inspections, environmental assessments, or lender conditions. A buyer may choose to proceed with knowledge and price adjustment, but non-disclosure removes informed consent. Superfund WQRRF CERCLA, Wetlands and Natural Area Open Space. The SPDS asks whether the property is located within or subject to ordinances such as Superfund, WQRRF, CERCLA, Wetlands Area, or Natural Area Open Space restrictions. In Arizona, WQRRF, Water Quality Assurance Revolving Fund sites, are state-managed contamination sites. Mesa Industrial Corridor. Example: a property near a designated WQRF site may have groundwater monitoring in the area. Even if the property itself is unaffected, proximity can influence buyer perception and future resale value. Natural area. Open space. Example: certain planned communities restrict development or alteration of designated natural areas. Buyers must understand use limitations before closing. This section ties directly to fiduciary duty and the obligation to disclose known material facts under Arizona law. Mine shafts, abandoned wells, plain flood history. Water damage and mold. Arizona contains historic mining areas and rural well systems. The SPDS asks about open mine shafts, abandoned wells, floodplain location, flood history, water damage, leaks, and mold growth. Flagstaff or globe. Example: an abandoned well on rural acreage presents a safety and liability issue. Disclosure allows a buyer to evaluate mitigation steps. Floodplain and flood history. Flood zone designation can affect insurance requirements and lender approval. Past flooding history can impact value and risk assessment. Even if repairs were made, known past flooding should be disclosed. Water damage and mold. Water intrusion and mold claims are among the most common post-closing disputes. If the seller is aware of prior leaks, roof failures, plumbing bursts, or mold remediation, that information must be disclosed clearly. The goal is not perfection, The goal is transparency. Other material information. The catch-all that defines professionalism. Line 303 asks what other material information the seller is aware of that might affect the buyer's decision-making process, value, or use. This is the broadest and most powerful question in the entire SPDS. Professional standard. If you are thinking, should this be disclosed? The safest answer is usually yes. This aligns with the Seller Disclosure Advisory Principle. When in doubt, disclose. Example: a long-standing neighbor dispute over a shared driveway may not fit neatly into prior boxes. That is exactly what this section is for. Seller certification. The legal commitment that survives. Closing the seller certification states that the information is true and complete to the best of the seller's knowledge, and that any changes must be disclosed in writing prior to close of escrow, including information revealed by subsequent inspections. This connects directly to what you learned earlier. Disclosure obligations continue if circumstances change. If a pipe bursts after the SPDS is delivered, but before closing, the seller must update disclosure in writing. Silence is not protection. The form also confirms receipt of the Seller Disclosure Advisory titled, When in Doubt, Disclose. This reinforces that disclosure is not a one-time event. It is an ongoing duty. Buyer Acknowledgement Investigation Responsibility and No Warranty Clause. The buyer's acknowledgement clarifies that the SPDS is based on the seller's actual knowledge and is not a warranty. Buyers are encouraged to investigate, obtain inspections, and consider a home warranty plan. This creates a balanced legal structure. Seller must disclose known material facts. Buyer must perform due diligence. Broker does not verify the seller's representations. This language is critical in risk management. It clarifies that the SPDS is not a guarantee of condition, but a disclosure of knowledge. Disclosure and contract deadlines. The final integration. If a buyer disapproves of any items disclosed, they must deliver written notice of disapproval, as provided in the purchase contract. This ties directly to the inspection period and buyer cancellation rights under the Arizona Residential Resale Real Estate Purchase Contract. In contract writing practice, this means timing matters. SPDS delivery triggers investigation decisions. Late delivery can extend or affect timelines. Accurate delivery documentation protects brokers. Chapter 4. Wrap-up disclosure as operational contract law. You have now moved from property description to systems, to utilities, to environmental exposure, and finally to certification and acknowledgement. The SPDS is not paperwork. It is operational contract law in action. When taught correctly, disclosure education prevents post-closing lawsuits, earnest money disputes, inspection, renegotiation chaos, broker supervision complaints, ADRE discipline. Transparency is not weakness. It is strategic risk management. Course discussions with answers. Discussion question: why does the seller certification require written updates if something changes before closing? Answer: because disclosure obligations continue until close of escrow, and failure to update known material changes can expose the seller to civil liability and undermine the integrity of the transaction. Discussion. Question: if a property previously experienced flooding, but repairs were completed, should that history still be disclosed? Answer: yes, because known past flooding is a material fact that may affect a buyer's decision-making process, value assessment, insurance requirements, and future risk evaluation. Discussion. Question: what is the purpose of the buyer's acknowledgement section stating the SPDS is not a warranty? Answer: it clarifies that the disclosure is based on the seller's actual knowledge, and that the buyer retains responsibility to investigate the property through inspections and due diligence.